Hi, everyone. This video is just to kind of give you an overview of your critical assignment. As you know, each course in the program has this critical assignment type of a requirement. For this policy course, this is the critical assignment that you will be doing as kind of your final assignment, your takeaway for the class. So let's just talk through some of the requirements for this assignment, make sure that we're all on the same page. As always, you can reach out and ask me any questions you may have. But for this critical assignment, what you are required to do is submit a final report covering all aspects of a policy analysis. This is a policy analysis course, and so your walkaway should be a comprehensive policy analysis. As always, the paper will be completed in APA 7th edition format. Should be about 10 to 20 pages in length, but there is no minimum or maximum number of pages. And so if you can get it done in less than 10, that's fine. If it takes you more than 20, that's fine as well. The 10 to 20 pages is just provided here just as kind of a guideline, a rule of thumb. I'm much more interested in quality over quantity. So the sections of your paper should include, as always, you'll have a title page. Then you'll have your executive summary. Some people refer to it as an abstract, but executive summary. That section should be about 250 to 500 words in length and contain brief information on the problem, the causes, stakeholders, alternatives, outcomes, and evaluation criteria. It's not an introduction. This is a condensed overview of the entire report. And so this is kind of in 250, 500 words. This is so your reader knows what is going to happen throughout the remainder of the paper. Then you have a section on the societal problem or issue. The problem issue section will focus on the problem or the issue that you want to address. Remember to state the problem or the issue in terms of your clients and constituents, not necessarily your agency's needs. Provide statistical evidence for every claim that you include in this section of the paper. Address details of the problem, including the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Remember, the lack of something is not necessarily a problem. Make sure your data are pertinent to the region of your concern. So, for example, if you're looking at the problem of AIDS in California, you may want to avoid quoting statistics on an increase of AIDS in Africa. Remember to admit all opinions and bias from your writing. Statistics should cover the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the problem or the issue. So here you're describing the problem or issue that you're focusing on. Then you'll have a section on your stakeholders. Should identify the main stakeholders and a statement for each one of their concerns. These stakeholders should be limited to large nonprofit organizations that have the ability to rally their members. Essentially, what we are looking for is we're looking for stakeholders who have the ability, the capacity to influence the policy-making process. So you'll be considering primarily groups that have those resources and have those members who can influence the process. Be sure to include stakeholders who will be on both sides of the issue and policy presented in your analysis. So not just supporters, but also opponents as well. Then a section on your policy alternatives include details of each policy alternative. Typically what you will do is you will offer up 3 of those. First will be the as-is policy. That's the current state of the policy, the current situation as it is. Then the second approach will be a policy that requires less government intervention. Then the third approach will be a policy that requires more government intervention. And they can title each one with a descriptive title. So your as is would be the as is situation, less government intervention, more government intervention. So it's very clear so that I know which of those policy approaches is which. It's usually good to start with the as is approach as your first policy approach, and then it's up to you in terms of ordering the other 2. For each policy, you want to include specific policy details, such as the size of any subsidies or fines, penalties, or incentives that are used to enforce the policy, what types of exceptions might be allowed for those policies. Consider including information on when a similar policy has been tried in the past, whether or not it has failed or succeeded. If the region that was used in was similar to your focus region, what types of lessons were learned from the implementation of that policy previously in that other area or in that other setting. Policy alternatives should be clear, concise, and able to stand alone so the reader will fully understand each one of those options. Then the anticipated outcomes section will focus on the measurable outcome that will result from implementing each of the policy alternatives. The as-is condition section should address the expected results if no changes are made. You should consider using trends, statistics, other changes and conditions that assist in your calculation. Information must be measurable, specific to the region, contain anticipated dates to achieve the results. You should have an implementation timeline. So this won't be really applicable for the as is because you're just keeping things as they are. But for the other two policy alternatives, you should have a section that includes a brief timeline and the major steps necessary to implement and sustain the policy alternative, and the department or agency that is responsible for completing each one of those activities in the timeline, and then a budget for each one of your policy alternatives, the major expenditures or budget amounts necessary to start up, implement, and maintain the alternative. You don't have to have a full-blown budget, but just an idea of some of the major things that money would have to be spent on to start up this policy alternative and to continue it. An evaluation section. So after you've presented all of your policy alternatives, then present the evaluative criteria and a justification for using those criteria. So how you would evaluate each one of these policy alternatives. Apply the evaluation criteria to each one of those alternatives. It's always a good idea to use an evaluation matrix so that you can visually depict all those different criteria for each one of those policy alternatives. And then a conclusion and recommendation section to pull together a summary of the pros and cons of each one of your three alternatives. Can be presented as a recommendation for one alternative over another, or you could just simply lay out the benefits and drawbacks of each one of the alternatives based upon the evaluative criteria that you have chosen, and then leave the choice of which alternative should be selected to an elected official at a later point in time. There's no specific number of required references that are necessary, but you should include the references for any information that you're including that is not considered common knowledge. Typically, we anticipate if you're giving information that's not considered common knowledge, that information does need to be cited. As I said before, I'll say it again, the paper should be prepared in APA 7th edition. It should be a well-written paper. Make sure to proofread it because there will be a quality of writing component to the grading rubric. So I will be reading through it. And so make sure that it is a well-written paper. Make sure it looks like a final draft as opposed to a first draft. And that is what we're considering to be the critical assignment for this course. Again, it's seeing that it is a policy analysis course. It's a course that needs to result in the creation of a policy analysis. This is just a foreshadowing of the assignment, just so you can kind of get a quick look at it. If you have any questions about it, as always, feel free to send me an email. Otherwise, I look forward to reading your work. So take care and have a great week.